Hey, everybody.
Hi. Well, so Bob and Ellen, things got real this week, right? So we've been talking about this show amongst the three of us for a year or so, and our little pool expanded this week. We've been talking to actors, huh? We have a cast. We're not going to tell anybody who that cast is yet, but we've been talking with them. And I would love to hear. We actually just got off a call with one. What it is like to know your actor before you know your script, and what you're learning in these conversations. How is it going? What are you walking away with?
Oh, well, it was wonderful. It was exciting to see them, but it all, that's one of the most magical things about being a playwright is that you create characters and then they come to life right in front of you. And so it's like, even though we don't have words, we do have very strong ideas of who these people are, what they care about, what they need. And suddenly in the last 2 days, we've been able to marry those ideas in our heads of the characters to the human beings, flesh and blood, who are going to be embodying them. And it's such an exciting moment of saying, oh, that's what you look like.
Yes.
And delight.
Yeah. Now we have faces and now we have voices. And, I've enjoyed in my career writing for specific actors. I love doing that. I love writing a role for friends, and our playwrights, our favorite people are actors and there's directors, right? But to be able to meet them and hear their voices, and Ellen and I have been spending a year talking about these two human beings and who we think they are, and we've been brainstorming together and coming up with wonderful bits of minutia and things that make them human and three-dimensional. And then so quickly to have that embodied. And Ellen is absolutely right. One of our favorite parts of process is when actors pick up the script for the first time. It's terrifying and it's blissful at the same time. And in the case of this project, we're not going to have a lot of time to come to terms with terror, right? Because there is going to be no table work and no work with the actors in that regard. So we better be prepared for that. But, obviously to hear from these two beautiful human beings, and then now we get to go and layer on to what we heard. And it's not that we are going to be lifting elements of their lives, but we're inspired by the truth bombs they just dropped on us, right? That are going to take us in directions that, we wouldn't necessarily have gone to had we not met these two specific people. These two people.
I think that's been such an exciting part of this for me, because as you say, it is super exciting when we hear an actor say the words in the script for the first time. But that's not what we've been hearing over this week, right? We've been having the actors just tell us about themselves, about their history, about their stories. They don't have a script. They're not giving us a character yet. They're right. Just being themselves. And I wonder, what do you listen for when they're telling those stories? What are you hearing when they tell those stories as writers? What parts what kinds of things are you trying to keep an ear out for? I see you all taking a lot of notes during.
Yeah, we were taking notes, and I was particularly taking notes about anecdotes and those sorts of things. What's your desert island album? Those kinds of things that we might have fun with. But I was also writing down character traits. This person tends to be warm and frenetic. This person takes some time to think before they respond to something. And those are going to, going to help us as we put dialogue on the paper. And it may not be, we're certainly not going to write in a moment or a beat where one actor pauses to think, but we now know that that's how that human being, that actor responds, without thinking in the moment. Mm-hmm. How they tell a story, how they set up a story, how animated they are with their hands. I noticed that in the two characters, and those things, unless they're, unless we have specific conversations about what you should do with your hands, I think we're going to see some things flying in really, really fun ways. So I could already hear, vocal patterns, ways with language, lyricism, those sorts of things that that are going to shine in the moment when they're in performance.
I think also I was hearing, not really even listening for, but noticing how people's voices change when they're talking about something that's important to them. Or that they care about, and all of a sudden there's a shift in joyfulness of their face, or like lift of their chest, like what matters. And I like to write about things that matter, even if I'm writing about something light. Even light stuff matters. We're talking about matters of the human heart in this story, and that is important. And so I was that was fun to see how those shifts happened in their voices and in their bodies.
Yeah, we get, I've done a million talkbacks between casts and audiences. And one of the questions that comes up again and again to actors is usually, how much of that is you? How much are you bringing into a character? How much is that style? How do you, and, it's different, of course, for every actor, but some part of the process it always has to do with sort of leaving, sort of stripping yourself away from the character, right? And I think it's so, to me, part of this great experiment that we're on is this idea of, no, let's figure out where their sort of soul and bodies and voices are, and add a character onto that, as opposed to stripping them away from the character here.
Yeah, I think we got and they were so giving in these conversations. I think we got a glimpse of who the real people are. And I think one thing they were both fun sessions, but I kind of felt like these are people that I would want to hang out with, right? That I would want to have a beer with, right? And so, yeah, it was just a joy.
I think our audiences will too.
Yeah, and I think they'll want to hang out with each other, which is this other piece. I mean, it's always, chemistry is always a piece of it, but they have to have such, I sort of hate this sometimes when we talk about chemistry, because actors create chemistry, that's their job, right? But these two actors actually have to have some natural chemistry, because they won't have the opportunity to figure out how to do it in a rehearsal room, right? They're actually going to have to come together, and it's going to have to spark.
And even in the casting process, trying to discern chemistry when you've never had them in the same room, you've never had them on the same Zoom call, we've never had them in the same room or on the same Zoom call, right? So that's again, that's part of the big experiment and the excitement of it all. Boy, that first night when they come together for the first time, that's going to be really, really fun. Yeah. And I don't think it'll be nerve-wracking. I mean, but I think it's just going to be fun when they meet for the first time.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's going to be so exciting. And I don't even know what chemistry means in this context too, right? When we think about it, there is no Zoom chemistry, right? That's why we hate it, right? and so figuring out what that means, because, I think we can, I mean, so much of this piece is about the idea of, how do we transcend time and space that way and make an actual connection? And I don't know the answer to that. I think we're discovering that in the course of the play.
And that's it, and that's part of what Ellen and I started talking about a year ago, which was, how to address this specific medium theatrically You know, I mean, I've done my share. I love environmental theater. I love site-specific theater. I just did a play in my backyard, which Alex came to. I wrote a play on Facebook. I wrote a play in a laundromat that was produced and performed in the laundromat. So the idea of, and the ways and methods that we can lean into and mine this form in ways that maybe we haven't seen done before. Or, you know, again, you know, I mean, a friend of mine invited me to a production of his Zoom play yesterday, and it's going to be filmed in a theater, and it looks like it's going to be beautiful. And I'm not sure I'm so excited anymore about that sort of thing. You know, is it film? Is it television? And what we're doing here is trying to be as live and immediate, like great theater is, and dangerous at the same time, right? So
yeah, I mean, I you know, as a director, one of the things that I'm always fascinated by and always curious about is, you know, what is the relationship between the character, the performer, and the audience, and can something new and exciting happen that way, right? And Bob, you talked about the experimental shows you've done where you've been in a different place, so immediately there's a new relationship that we haven't felt because I'm around a campfire in your backyard with these actors, right? Or you know, I did a show a couple of years ago where we were in a baseball stadium and we were moving to different corners and different parts of the baseball stadium, and there were actors there, and each time you entered a scene, it was the immediate thing before a word was said is, what is my relationship to these performers right now, right? And I think this is going to be, I hope this is a really new and different relationship, not because it's on Zoom. I mean, that's part of it, but we've been there before, but because we know that we're sort of with these actors when they don't have a net, when they don't know what's going to happen, when we're all sort of trusting together. And I think we have this sort of, especially with these two actors, are going to have this deep want for not just their characters to succeed, but for these actors to succeed in this, you know, and to find their way together is going to be a different relationship than we're used to between audience and performance.
It is the relationship between audience and performance. So a couple of weeks ago, I'm cutting the grass in the backyard, and I've been fighting with my bank about, I lost my bank card and getting a new bank card. So I'm on hold for an interminable amount of time. And while I'm on hold, they transfer me into someone else's call. And I could hear this lady fighting with the, you know, the bank about some financial issue. And I started, I'm like, hello, can you hear me? Hello? And I realized that I could hear their conversation. They could not hear me at all. So, you know, obviously it's a bank, financial information. I clicked out, but our audiences are going to have a chance to click in to someone else's private call. You know, that's going to be really fun. I think for us as writers to create that.
Yeah, and Ellen, you've lived through. I mean, we've experienced this with your show, with your solo show, which for those who weren't there, I mean, it, you know, was a piece that was, you know, your story that was performed by an actor who was, you know, sort of like the photo negative of you, right, as a man who's, you know, but early on we are informed that you're in the audience and where you are, so that we have. It changes everything about our relationship to Vin in that, but also to you. And you've been doing that show around the country. And I wonder, what have you learned about that relationship over that time?
Never do that. It's terrible. Well, I remember when I first wrote, you know, when you're first writing a play, you don't know what you're doing. You know, like I write my way in, and the moment I discovered that it was a male performer who was telling this very, very personal story, which is my story, I was shocked by that. I was like, oh, okay, well, all right. I'm used to actors saying my work. But only a page and a half later when I discovered that I was in the audience and he was talking to me, because that's what came out of the end of my pen. Is there was something transformational that required my presence for a longer time than a play usually does. And I think my subconscious realized that. And so there I have sat in my chair for 5 years of performances with different actors saying my words to me. And I mean, because that's some of it, right? Is like the truths that we can't figure out, the questions that we have in our hearts that we can't figure out, is what I tend to put in my plays. And my characters, the imaginary people who I create, help me figure stuff out. And so it's like this circuit of, you know, of giving and then receiving your story back, but that changes the playwright as well as the people around you. And it's when I'm sitting out there in the audience, in that play particularly, but in any play, the best moments are when I find myself leaning forward and saying to myself, what happens next? And I wrote the play, but I'm asking because I'm caught in the moment of like anything could happen. And more, that's what we're trying to capture with this, is that anything can happen, but really this time the whole script isn't written. They don't have all the words. We are leaping forward into the great unknown.
And I you know, the just one comment is, but Ellen, I know when I saw that production, a couple of things came to mind, and one is the way that you raised empathy and made us care so much about the story and the characters, and that's what we're going to be trying to do here. But I remember after the show coming up to you, because I really didn't know you, and I was like, are you okay? You know, we cared so much about you and, you know, and your protagonist on that journey.
Now I feel like we've got Ellen watching us talk about this is even worse than watching her own show, is watching us talk about but there was such a sense, and this is always so exciting to me in those really pretty rare times it happens, of like being conscious that my brain was being rewired during that, right? That I knew how to take in a play, even a true story, even a solo show where somebody says, I'm going to tell you a story. They're standing up on that stage and doing it. I know how I'm wired to take in that information. But the second it became clear that Ellen was there and was going to experience this with us and was going to put herself there for us to watch her watch this show, my whole brain had to be rewired about how I'm going to take in this information. And in this really beautiful way, like the entire show was about, wait, what does it mean to hear that line? Let me look at her hear that line. Let me see him say, and I was so active in that as an audience member in that show, because I was learning how to see the show the whole time. And I think that was so exciting for me. And I think, you know, if things go really well with Duck Harbor, I think that's going to be part of the feeling of as an audience member, I'm constantly, my brain is sort of rewiring on how to hear this information. Because it's one thing to see two characters have a conversation over Zoom. It's another to know that actor, what that actor is doing in that moment, and then responding, and to sort of see those wheels happen while staying with the characters. It is such an active part of storytelling, I think, or it has the potential to be such an active part.
And our cast, our actors are going to be learning how to do it in the moment as well.
And we know that, right? That's the part that's exciting, is that we know they're learning in this moment, that we're watching them learn the show in this moment.
I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be crazy fun.
Yeah, and I want, you know, it's been fun, you know, one of the like forced good things, I guess, about this pandemic is that we've got no choice but to sort of dream and think about things a little bit, you know, like every show's different, and every show takes our heart, and we throw our whole selves into it. But this opportunity to step back and not just say, you know, what's my next play going to be about, or what do I care about, but more like, you know, what is the medium with which I'm going to write this time? That's such a new feeling in our, for me at least, in the way we work. I wonder how, you know, how conscious you all were of that, of I have this story I want to tell versus I want to try to create a new medium to work in.
I mean, I'll just respond to that quickly, because my students have been asking me about the project, and we're using this language web series. I'm like, wait. You know, I'm not sure this is scripted television, right? This is not scripted television in a traditional way. You know, these are, and you know, these are cold readings live in front of an audience with no preparation, right? So, so yeah, I mean, we call it a web series, but you know, this is, you know, I mean, acting without a net, you know, we're just pushing them out there. Here, take these few words, take this situation, take this dramatic situation, and do something with it. And they're not even getting a particularly much coaching from a director, right? You know, we've given them sketches of who these human beings are, who these people are. And yeah, so I think I'm not sure I would have been so excited to do a scripted web series. That's a different, I mean, yeah, maybe I would, folks who want to hire me to do that, but that's something different than what we're doing here. And I think we're going to be writing with that in mind.
There's no real name for what we're doing. We're making it up. It's a new thing. It's also interesting to be co-writing with someone else, because that, as playwrights, that's not something that we are accustomed to doing. We are queens and kings of our own universes and create them whole cloth. But I've been, for the last 6 or 7 years, I've been having this sideline in opera. Weirdly, I was looking for something more practical than playwriting, you know. But it is opera. But it's been really, really fun, I found, working with composers. Because when you are creating a work together with a composer, you really are asked to marry your sensibilities and understanding of the story from the very inception of it, or they won't write it. They won't know how to write music to it if they aren't all in from the beginning. And so I've been having this interesting process of having to give over a little bit of, you know, leading in the dance and following in the dance, and finding that is sometimes difficult. It requires a lot of listening, but it's also so nice not to be alone when you're trying to tell a story. It's so fun to have someone else to bounce off ideas and say, oh, what if we did this? And Bob and I have been doing a lot of what if this?
You know, and that's the thing that I think excites me most about where we're about to head, now that we're starting actual writing, is the what if, is that you and I have not been territorial really about anything at all. And it's really, we've really just been inspired by comments, suggestions, this, that, and we've run with them almost in kind, and I don't have a lot of experience in improv, but almost in an improvisational kind of way. Well, what if this happens? And what if that happens? And what if she does this? And what if he does that? And yeah, so, and, you know, and finding those things all alone is really not easy. It's not easy. And I think we all know, because we're all writers, that when a friend says something like, well, what if this happens? And then your mind just starts going. Even if you're not writing a project with them, that can be enough to send you in a direction, you know, that can save a moment, that can save a scene, that can change a play, a story, and a character's life and journey.
Yeah. You know, I've been thinking a lot, because this is obviously not a traditional director role too. And you're so used to, you know, having so much input on what happens. And but it's been really exciting as you guys talk about, sort of giving up some power, giving up some of that full agency that you're used to as playwrights. And I remember when I studied in Europe, the first week of the program, we'd be in a room with actors who would do a series of sort of physical work and exercises and things like that. And we weren't allowed to say a thing to them. And it was maddening to me. And finally, the directing teacher sort of pulled all the directors out and talked, and we were all feeling like itching to do something, right? And she said, 90% of directing is learning how to see. And it was such an valuable thing that stuck with me always, is that when you're seeing why and how things happen, that's how you end up making choices, and that's how you help actors make choices. And I think that's going to be such an exciting part of this, is right, they've got a script, but the work that we'll have to do during the performance is learn how to see, to figure out what it is that happened and why, and where the choices were, and why it went that way, and what that actor's instincts are that take it that way, and how those dominoes fall. And and we got to sort of see it in real time, but it's really sort of exciting to be in that place, I think.
It is, and since we're speaking about process, so some of that inspiration is going to come from these postmortems that we have after a production, when, especially the three of us and maybe the actors as well, get together and debrief what just happened, and how the two characters, actors responded in the moment, and what we do with that from there. And it could very well be that we're listening like the actors are listening, and when we hear, her respond in one way to him, that could send us in an entirely different direction for the next episode. So that's going to be really fun.
And you just have to give up that thing that we all do, which is, this is the way that line should sound, right? Because all of that mental energy is useless, because once it's been spoken, it's gone forever on this one, right? There's no stopping and going back in rehearsal and trying it this way, right? So whatever you think it should sound like is absolutely meaningless, right? And it's going to be what it is.
And in that regard, something that I've been sort of wrestling with a little bit is, and part of it is freeing, is that this is probably the only performance of this that will ever happen, or at least in this way, So, why be stubborn over particular moments? I think just let them happen and see what happens.
Well, I'm curious to see how much you all start writing towards that ambiguity too. Like, at which points do you learn that, like, oh, this line can go either way, and I'm going to give it to them. You know what I mean? Versus where you lead them. And I, I don't know. I don't think we'll know till you're there of how fun that feels in the moment. Right?
No, it may be absolutely terrifying.
Right.
Oh no, I didn't mean it that way.
Exactly. Well, this is great. Thank you all again. And so now we go, now the thing that I've said to you all is, you don't have to write anything yet, because let's get the actors and let's have you meet them and all of that. And now it's getting kicked back to you, huh?
Let's start writing.